Mark, our executive producer today. Chapters 14 and 15. Luke, chapters 22 through 24. And John, chapter 18 through 19. Now, I just have indicated the passion narratives. There's a number of them, at least 3 of them, have also resurrection narratives, which we will look at when we reconvene after Easter, if that's okay with you. I still have a file, but we haven't used it since 2008. So I'm sure, most of the old-timers here lost the notes or forgot about it, and some who are new, it'll be brand new material for you. And I'll give it in a new, fresh way. All right? So, it'll be helpful if you still have the map handout that I gave you of Jerusalem and so on. Some of the stuff I'm going to refer to today, you can, it'll help you identify where these maps. Now, we were talking about the Pax Romana. So it was a kind of a philosophical ideology starting from about 31 BC, extending to about 250 AD. Okay, quite a while. It started under Augustus, Caesar, and Augustus defeated Mark Antony and his army in September of 31 BC. He declared himself the Principes, which means first citizen. And he strived to bring peace to all the provinces throughout the Roman Empire. North Africa, much of the Middle East, up into Europe until they ran into those barbarian tribes, and particularly when they went to that Celtic island, they were afraid of the Irish, those Celtics. They had wee little ones, and all kinds of mythologies that the Roman soldiers didn't know about. It scared the bejeebies out of them. So and if the leprechauns didn't get them, the little fairy people would come creeping at night and tickle in their bedrolls and so on. So they were afraid of the little creepy people. Pax, of course, means peace, huh? Peace throughout the Roman Empire was so now they set up various titles in the various provinces, and after the Principes, there were prefecti, and then there were procurators. Okay, so prefecti, they were like we would call governors of regions, okay, in the Roman Empire. The procurators, they were more like Pontius Pilate was, okay, in charge of sub-regions of provinces. And so we have a list of Judean governors, prefecti, that's given to us in the history of the Jews by Josephus. I mentioned Josephus before, right? Flavius Josephus, Roman first century writer. Now, here's an interesting thing. So, in the 1960s, archaeologists were over here on the seacoast at what was Caesarea, Mauritania, and uncovering rocks, and so they found a stone slab. It must have been a part of a palace or something, and it was written in Latin: Pilate, Pontius Pilatus, Prefectus Judea. So Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea. And so it was in, he was appointed by Tiberius Caesar. So that gave, historical verification, or scientific, if you include archaeology as part of science, which, we should, scientific verification, that there was a man named Pontius Pilate, and he was governor of Judea at about the early part of the 1st century AD, because that was the level of the archaeological excavation. He was known, according to Josephus, to have been appointed by Tiberius. And Pontius Pilate had a mentor or advisor by the name of Sejanus, who was an anti-Jewish person. So Josephus, as well as Philo, have a number of stories in their histories about Pontius Pilate to give an indication of the personality and the kind of person, ruler that he was. So Josephus writes, after Pontius Pilate first arrived to take over the governorship, there was others before him, okay? He had his Roman army smuggled by night the military banners with the image of the emperor on, and put it up overnight, hanging over the Antonia fortress. Look at your map, see where the Antonia fortress is. It's on the upper end or north end of the temple. It overlooked the temple. It was higher than the temple. And so, could you imagine, overnight, all of a sudden, word is spread in Jerusalem that there's a new governor, and then overnight, great big banners with the image of the Roman Empire on. And of course, you know how the Jews felt about graven images, right? So the Jews, of course, objected. And Pilate, of course, he had a palace. Actually, you could use King Herod's palace in the city of Jerusalem, but he kind of stayed put over here at seaside resort, Caesarea Maritimia, nice seaside resort, the Mediterranean, cool breezes at night coming off the Mediterranean, So he kind of stayed there. The Jewish religious leadership came over to protest to his residence in Caesarea. Pilate didn't let him in. For 5 days they stood outside his palace in Caesarea. Wouldn't let him. Finally, Pilate said, that's enough of that. He sent his soldiers out, take out your swords, put it, tell those Jewish leaders, get the heck out of here, go back to Jerusalem. You know what they did? They ripped open their robes and they bared their necks and they said, come on, kill us. Unless we have an audience with Pontius Pilate. Well, Pilate saw that and he was like, whoa. Guess what? He removed the standards from Antonia Fortress. Okay? He acquiesced. He gave in to them. Now, this story is found in Josephus. Josephus wrote 4 books, History of the Jews, and the one that's called Antiquities. Philo, of course, also was writing a Roman history. Philo, in Alexandria, Egypt, Philo was a Jewish philosopher, but also a historian for that time period. Now, there's another story that Josephus has. The Jews again opposed him when the Jewish leaders, I should say, opposed him when Pilate wanted to borrow money from the temple treasury to build an aqueduct. Aqueduct between, one end of the town to the other and into the Temple Mount area, because hundreds of thousands of Jews would show up at the holy days and so on, and they needed some water sources, and he thought that would be good. And the Jewish temple in the first century, they were loaded. They were loaded. There's other accounts. I think it was Mark Antony that went and borrowed a loan from them for one of his wars. Never returned it. But, the Jewish leaders at Jesus' time, they consider this a profane use of the funds that were supposed to be dedicated to Yahweh God. Pilate had Roman soldiers mix in with the demonstrators in the temple area and cudgel them, causing casualties and sudden death. Now, this historic account in Philo could possibly be referred to if we take a look at Luke chapter 13. Let's take a look. Where's that in the Bible? Where's that in the Bible? Luke chapter 13. Verse 1. Here, at that same time, some people who were present there told him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with the blood of their sacrifices. And he said to them, this is Jesus being opposed by the crowds. Do you think that the Galileans suffered in this way because they were greater sinners than all the other Galileans? By no means. But I tell you, if you do not repent, you will all perish as they did. So, and we look in the footnote to this passage, and it says, the death of Galileans at the hands of Pilate and the accidental death of those whom the tower fell on are presented by the Lucan Jesus as timely reminders of the need for all to repent. For the victims of these tragedies should not be considered outstanding sinners who were singled out by punishments. And then furthermore, there's another account of Pilate's cruelty. Again, footnote to 13:1. The slaughter of the Galileans is unknown outside of Luke. But from what is known about Pilate from the Jewish historian Josephus, such a slaughter would be in keeping with the character of Pilate. And you notice that. Then the next account is that Pilate disrupted the Samaritans when they were kind of renewing the covenant, their covenant with Almighty God, and killed a whole bunch of them. So, the bottom line is this. Pilate is painted then by these historical accounts, and a little bit, here it's dropped in the scriptures. He had a high-handed attitude towards the people in his province. And he attacked and imprisoned people, especially the Samaritans. And it got so bad, and the people complained so much that he had the Principes, the regional governor, pulled them out and sent Pilate to the Roman Emperor Caligula. Now, if you ever read stories about Caligula, there's a book written about Caligula. We know Nero was nuts and crazy, huh? But Caligula, I think he was Nero's uncle. He was just as goofy. Old guy. So, he sent him. There's a letter that was sent to Caligula, and part of it read this. Pilate, he's inflexible by nature, cruel, filled with stubbornness, graft, insults, robberies, assaults, wanton abuse, executions without trials, and unending various cruelties. This was in the letter sent to Caligula. And it's found in the writings of Philo. So it's not a very good picture, huh? And, I'm telling you this so you get kind of an idea of the character of Pontius Pilate, because we're going to hear about him in the Passion accounts, and with Jesus, so on. Now, later Eastern Christianity in their writings were far kinder in their presentation of Pontius Pilate. As a matter of fact, So much so that there's some New Testament Apocrypha. One is called the Acts of Pilate, and the other, the Gusta, or History of Pilate, and Acts of Pilate, that tells about his death. There's one early father of the church, Tertullian, from early 2nd century, who depicts Pilate as being a true Christian at heart. And that after he met with the emperor, he was basically exiled to southern Gaul. And there's one apocryphal story that he actually became a Christian before his death. Okay? So, now that's not gospel truth, but that's from one of these apocryphal works.
Yeah. Father, was Judea considered a plum, a very choice assignment in the Roman Empire?
No. No, it was considered an armpit.
Okay, well.
Yeah, because they looked down upon, basically the Jewish people. The Romans did. They had to keep them under their thumb because they, followed their own code of laws, which, educated Romans, held that the code of law of Jews was even higher than Romans. Yeah.
But the temple had a lot of money. So
temple had a lot of money? Yeah.
I don't know.
What are you trying to say?
Well, I'm just saying that the Romans were looking at Judea because the temple was there, the Jewish temple was there with money, with revenue.
There were other temples scattered throughout the region of Syria, that shrines and so on, that had money in them. Okay? It's just that for the Jewish temple in Jerusalem had a steady flow of it. Okay? And they knew it. And they didn't lend it out. So, rest of the story, Pilate did end up building an aqueduct in the city of Jerusalem, and we found archaeological evidence of it. And it did head into the area around the temple and so on. Although, interestingly enough, in archaeology, I don't think they found cisterns in the Temple Mount area. You would think if they had an aqueduct heading into it, they would have cisterns, right? I mean, even in our house, we got, tanks that hold water just in case, right? And back then, they had cisterns. So that's kind of head scratcher, so to speak. All right, now, on your outline, I have something about Pilate's wife. And in Matthew chapter 27, we see her, although she's not named. But I'm going to reveal to you this morning the name and the background of Pontius Pilate's wife, okay, who tried to intervene in the trial of Jesus. So you look at the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27. Okay. I have verse 19. So the setting is Jesus is before Pontius Pilate, and Pilate has paraded out Barabbas, and said to the crowd, "Okay, who do you want, Jesus or Barabbas?" And of course they shouted Barabbas, and for he knew that it was only in envy that they had handed him over. This is Pilate. In verse 19. And while he was still seated on the bench, his wife sent him a message. Have nothing to do with that righteous man. I suffered much in a dream today because of him. Okay.
Matthew.
Huh?
Got a note here, it says only in Matthew.
That's right, it is only in Matthew. Let's see, is there a footnote to that? There should be a big one. The footnote, of course, is Jesus' innocence is declared by a Gentile woman in a dream. In Matthew's infancy narrative, dreams are the means of divine communication. So in Matthew, we get it over and over again, right? Dreams. That Joseph, moves his family 4 times because of a dream, because of dreams, huh? So it plays an important part. That's the way God communicates with people in the Gospel of Matthew, anyhow. So in this one, it has towards the end of his life, it's his the wife of Pilate that sends this. Now, who was this woman? Well, her name, ta-da! Claudia. Okay. Father, what else do you know about Claudia? Well, she was a granddaughter of Emperor Augustus. She was the illegitimate daughter of Tiberius's 3rd wife. Tiberius Caesar's 3rd wife, illegitimate daughter. Some speculate that this Claudia was mentioned in St. Paul, especially in the 2nd letter of Timothy. There's a Claudia mentioned, and some speculate that it was her. In extra-canonical literature, apocryphal literature, the name is Claudia Procula, or Procla, kind of connecting her name with Pilate's position. In the Passion narrative, she is called Claudia. And in the movie, The Passion of the Christ, she is called Claudia. Huh?
I just watched that again last week, and it shows her dreaming, and it also shows Pilate communicating with her just by looking at her in the scenes.
Yeah.
He handled it well.
Yeah. So, in the Eastern Church, she's beatified, and they honor her with a saint's feast day on October 27th. The Coptic Church honors both Pilate and Claudia as saints and martyrs. The Coptic Church. Okay, who knows? When you hear Coptic Church, those Christians come from where? Egypt, that's right. Egypt. So the Greek word for Egypt is Kopka. Okay? So Pilate's main concern, of course, was maintaining crowd control to preserve the Pax Romana. And it was hard to believe that he would not yield to the Jewish high priest's request. But he had to have some kind of legitimate what do you call an accusation that's brought before a trial? Indictment, yeah, to render the decree of death, huh? So when he questioned, pay close attention in the Passion narratives when Pilate is questioning Jesus. And most of the questions revolve around him, being king of the Jews. So being king of the Jews, don't forget, Pilate had put down other messiahs, so-called messianic figures, and so on. That being king of the Jews, well, they had a couple of Herods that were kings, but in different subparts of the province, right? Herod Antipas, for instance, and so on. But Pilate knew previous messianic claims, and they usually led to civil disruption and unrest. So this gives the background context to the dialogue that we find between Pilate and Jesus in the Passion accounts, and especially in Good Fridays, when you listen to the Passion account and the dialogue between him, Jesus, and Pilate. So he was kind of a despicable man, huh? At least presented in histories at that time. So, all right, is that helpful at all? Yeah, Bob?
I'm curious why there's so much difference between the Eastern Church and the Western Church and how they view Pilate.
The difference is somewhat the traditions that were passed down, and some of it was linguistically. So the Easterns, of course, maintain Greek as the main means of communication and understanding and passing on histories as well as the theology of the faith. Western Church, Roman Church, there's a reason why we're called Roman Catholic. It's also called the Latin Church. So the development of early theology and history from that end, Western end of the Roman Empire, was in Latin. So it was a difference between Latin and Greek, and the traditions that were passed on through them. Some of the New Testament apocryphal works came down to us through the Greeks. So the Greek churches, kind of fostered those and held them up as important. And that's why, they have maybe been left with that impression that Pilate wasn't so bad because they read, the Acts of Pilate. And okay?
So
anyone else? Patricia, yes.
Does the Eastern Church then have the same Bible that we do?
Yeah, the Eastern Church is, basically we call it Orthodox Bible. Although in a number of Orthodox Bibles, they will have some of the New Testament apocryphal books as well in a subsection. Okay. Mark, are we getting some questions?
Not online.
Not online. Okay. So, all right. No. Anybody else? Dorothy.
It appears to me, though, Pontius Pilate did not really sentence him to death. He handed him over to the crowd to do what they wanted to.
Yeah.
What do you think was going to happen?
Right. But, it's pointed out, too, that, the Roman people and the city, that they weren't allowed to execute people. Now, sometimes they flew off the handle, and according to their Jewish laws, someone did something so egregious that they had to pick up stones and stone them to death. Like that story about that woman caught in the act of adultery that we had last weekend, right? Did you ever stop to think? If she was caught in the very act of adultery, where was the man? Huh?
I think he was in the crowd throwing stones.
But no one threw a stone. Yeah. Yeah, probably. Probably one of those religious leaders. Yeah. Yes, Patricia.
I also read recently that their law said that if they were caught in adultery, both of them were to be punished.
The Jewish law said, yeah, both of them, if they were caught in the very act, both of them should be, killed, stoned to death. Okay, Dorothy, did you feel I answered your question, or did I get off?
I understand. He knew what was going to happen. When he handed him over to the crowd, he knew what was going to happen. He
knew what was going to happen, yeah. But he had to put up that sign above his head.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that was to make it, according to Roman laws, legal. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And in his mind, Pilate's mind, that was an act of sedition, right? An act of rebellion, okay? Close to a terrorist act. And don't forget, if indeed, the week before Jesus died, if indeed the week before he, like what we're going to celebrate this weekend, came triumphantly into, the city of Jerusalem, the week before, and drew a crowd. Yeah, Hosanna in the highest. I don't know if I ever told you that, but 1974, I had the ability with my seminary classmates to actually walk in the parade of Holy Palm Sunday, okay? And we started out not in the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Gethsemane. We started out on the other side, the east side of the Mount of Olives, which is the town of Bethany. Sun was coming up, just, and they said, the parade's going to start at about 8 o'clock. And so we walked from Bethany, mile and a half, over the Mount of Olives, and we were like, where's the staging area? We got over the Mount of, where's everybody, It's like 8 o'clock, you're supposed to start, Do they have a prayer service, or does the Orthodox priest come out and do swing some incense and so on, and bless everybody? No, it's just kind of a ragtag kind of thing. So we started making our way down the Mount of Olives, and they walked down into the Kidron Valley and then back up into would be the old city of Jerusalem, okay? That's the parade route. Kind of across from the shrine of the Ascension, where the ancient church of the Ascension of Jesus is, about a third of the way down. There's kind of in the road, there's kind of a turnout. And we stopped to take a little rest, and we looked, and as long as we could see, it snakes down like that. It's going downhill. It snakes down into the Kidron Valley and then up. And we looked down ahead, and here the whole place is lined. Jews and Muslims are out there with their lawn chairs and ice boxes and so on. They talk loud, and they're out there, just like they're watching a parade. And all these Christians and Christian groups coming past them. And they said there was somewhere between 10 and 12,000 in the parade route. And they thought maybe over 100,000 lining the streets to watch us Christian. And it was really interesting because one wave of Christian group, they would be carrying their banners. It might be Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or some youth, and they would have their banners with their name on it. It would be colorful, and they'd be singing, like we would call Holy Week songs and so on. A lot of them based on melodies and so on that we use. So we kind of recognize the song, but we didn't understand their languages because it was in their own languages. So it was really fascinating to stand, on the side and so on. So let's take a look at Gospel of Luke, the Passion narrative, starting from verse 22. Not verse, chapter 22. Passion narrative. Okay, you got it? So the first thing, and we find this in the other accounts too. Now, the feast of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was drawing near. And the chief priests and scribes were seeking a way to put him to death, for they were afraid of the people. Why would that be?
They don't want anything to upset the current political system.
Yes. Passover was one of the chief high holidays, right? So they had Jews from all over the diaspora, all over the Roman Empire, come for Passover. And the whole business about, recounting the Exodus and having a meal with a lamb and, and vegetables and unleavened bread and all that, right? That's very important for the Jews at that time. So that's a thing to note. And Luke here paints the picture, although he uses Mark and a little bit of Matthew. Then it says, verse 3, Satan entered Judas, the one named Iscariot, who was counted among the 12, and he went to the chief priests and temple guards to discuss a plan of handing him over. And they were pleased and agreed to pay him money. And he accepted their offer and sought a favorable opportunity to hand him over in the absence of a crowd. So initially they were going to try to pick him off when there was no crowd around, okay? But it certainly sounds like a conspiracy, right? That Judas was playing an important role in. And then next is, stuff preparing for and celebrating the Passover supper, what we call the Last Supper. And then verse 14, when the hour came, he took his place at table with his disciples, and he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat again until there's a fulfillment of the kingdom of God. Now, see that? Forget it. Okay? That wasn't the seating arrangement. First of all, they didn't have seats. They were on cushions. Okay? And the configuration of the table, I told you this before, but was like this. They sat on cushions all the way around, huh? And
Da Vinci's is a photo.
yeah, Da Vinci, that was artistic expression. Okay. So, and I'm going to tell you this because when you go to Good Friday service, you see, and if you go to Holy Thursday, the washing of the feet service, they'll have the account that we find in the gospel, verse 17 of John. So, when Jesus washed their feet, who was the last one to get washed? Peter. Okay, so Peter would have been at the very end of the line. So Peter sat here. Okay, Jesus would have been here. Judas would have been right next to him here.
How do you know that?
Just read the Gospel of John. Okay, John the Beloved was next to Jesus, right here. How do I know? Okay, how do we know that? Because they set out table settings and food settings, 2 people at a time. And in the Gospel of John, John, the Beloved reaches over to, who is it, Joel? Who is it, Lord? And Jesus says, the one who I dip the morsel in and give it to you. So, that would have been Judas Iscariot. And then he tells Judas, leave. And it says in the Gospel of John that Peter signaled over to Judas, ask the Lord, who is it? You look at that, which one is Peter, which one is John? I guess John is the one that was without a beard, according to him. But how could, Peter have signaled to John to reach over with that configuration? It doesn't make sense logically. Huh? So, this is what, especially Good Friday, I want you to think of the setting for the Last Supper, this kind of table, no chairs, they were on cushions, okay, and Jesus would have sat there. Typically, that would have been the seat of honor at a table service, seat of honor. And the one throwing the party or paying for the party was always at this position, so that they could run to the kitchen and make sure everything was prepared and so on, and everything was taken care of. Yes, Bob.
What is the significance of Judas being in that basically an honored position?
Jesus, he was in that because he kept the purse.
Judas.
Yeah, and there is. Let's see. Do I have it? In this account, you have to listen for. They're going to mention money bag in the Lucan account. So then I forget what verse it is.
6.
What?
36.
36? 36. And 35 before it. He said to them, when I send you forth without a money bag or sack or sandals, were you in need of anything? No, nothing, they replied. So he said, but now, one who has a money bag should take it, and likewise a sack, and one who does not have a sword should sell a cloak and buy one. So is this maybe, as Luke puts it, a prefigurement, a hint to answering that question that he had? Who is it, Lord? Mr. Moneybags, one who all along has paid for, whatever was our needs. And that was Judas Iscariot, who's also identified as a thief. So, okay, if you go through this, something else to look for. It's only in the Gospel of Luke, I want to do this to get through, only in the agony in the garden, he doesn't say garden, but one of the things it does say is that, and I didn't write the verse down, but they went out to the Mount of Olives. It doesn't say garden, it says Mount of Olives. Verse 39. Then going out, he went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. Okay? As was his custom. I don't know if that strikes you as a curious little thing, but it does fit with, if Bethany, the home of Lazarus and Mary and Martha, and they were dear friends of him, okay, if they were on the other side of the Mount of Olives, the east side of the Mount of Olives, then the next open place, maybe public place, over the Mount of Olives, down below on the foot of the Mount of Olives, a garden. And a garden with space that people could camp out there, so to speak. And if Jesus came with this entourage of apostles, and particularly if he still had the women with him, his mother, the mother of James and wife of Zebedee, mother of James and John, she hung around with him too, Mary Magdalene. The women weren't going to stay in the same place as the men overnight. They were good religious Jews. Where would they stay? There aren't hotels and motels.
Mary and Martha's.
Probably Mary and Martha's, yeah. On the other side. So all they had to do is walk over the Mount of Olives. That's only a mile and a half. And down where the Garden of Gethsemane. So only he mentions the blood droplets when Jesus is praying in the agony in the garden. And after that, when Jesus is arrested here in the Gospel of Luke, you'll hear on Thursday or on this weekend, someone pulls a sword and cuts off the ear of the high priest's servant. But it's only in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus touches it and heals them right away. And then it has 3 times Peter being questioned in the courtyard of the high priest. Here he makes that very clear, courtyard of the high priest. And then Peter went out and wept bitterly. Now, there's all kinds of questions about that council, that night council that is meeting. Who makes up that council? Was it the Jewish Sanhedrin, or did the Jewish Sanhedrin meet the next day to condemn Jesus and then bring him before Pilate and so on? Now, after Easter, I'll be going over some of that because it deals with the controversy that brings about Jesus' trial and death and so on. And then the question by Pilate here in this account, are you the king of the Jews? And please note what Jesus answers. Barabbas! Give us Barabbas. Now, Barabbas, interestingly, is found in all 4 gospel passion accounts. Okay? Besides Pilate and Jesus, there's very few people that are found in all 4 accounts. All right? And he is identified in various ways as a revolutionary, as a murderer, as a bandit, a lawless, and a robber. He was a bad dude. So, but this is the only account where where Pilate, anywhere, that he parades a prisoner to be released. Okay? It's only in this account then, when we get into chapter 23, the carrying of the cross, and of course, you know, as they led him forth, verse 26, they took hold of a certain Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming in from the country, and after laying the cross on him, they made him carry it behind Jesus. And a large crowd of people followed him, including many women who mourned and lamented. And Jesus turned to them, and we know this from the way of the cross, right? The Stations of the Cross. Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep instead for yourselves and for your children. And then he goes on, So Simon of Cyrene, he's only mentioned here. However, in the Gospel of Mark, there's a footnote under chapter 15, verse 21. And it mentions Simon of Cyrene, and it gives us a little indication that later on, he has 2 sons, Alexander and Rufus, or something, that is written up in an account. And when the that deacon who baptized the Ethiopian eunuch, not Stephen, Philip, Philip. After he baptized the Ethiopian eunuch in the Acts of the Apostles, he goes to the coastal town, Joppa, and he stays at the house of a certain Simon who has sons. See, they're interconnected, okay? Okay, if you know. But Simon is mentioned here carrying the cross, helping carry the cross. Skull place, they crucify him at the skull place, and of course they put up the indictment, King of the Jews, INR. I had, it was kind of a weird thing. I was ready to come out for a funeral. Ready to start a funeral at St. Pius, when I was at St. Pius, yeah. And a guy from the family came up to me and he took me aside, all my robes and everything. And at St. Pius they have a humongous cross behind the altar. It's like 12 feet or 15 feet and so on, and great big plaque above INRI. And the guy comes up and says, Father, do you know what that means, INRI? I said, yeah, I know. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. No, it can also mean, I never regretted it.
What?
I never regretted it. And it was like, I'm going out, I'm trying to think of what am I going to say to this person who died in his funeral liturgy, and you laid something like that on me? But I never forgot that either. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that, just a few more things I could tell you about, but pay close attention, and if there's places that come up or things that come up or situations when you listen to the Passion accounts in the next week, either this weekend from Gospel of Luke or Good Friday, Gospel of John, write them down, bring them to Bible class, and I'll explain them for you. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.
No Bible next week.
No Bible next week. That's right.
It's not written.
2 weeks.
Of course, yet. It's 15 and a half hands.